Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ultimate Show. My name is Ben, and alongside me for the preview is James. Now, sorry about last week. We were kind of a little occupied, so we'll go back to the week before to decide who lost, and unfortunately, we both tied with the amount of picks we got wrong. So let's hope we get differences this week. So now, the game of the week for ESPN is in the South Division, so we will start with that. So now the ESPN 3 game is the Jacksonville Cannons against the Raleigh Flyers. Jacksonville is on a bit of a winning run, and Raleigh has lost recently, but they've played Dallas and a couple other tough opponents. So I'm looking forward to this game. As a non-South fan, I think that it'll be very entertaining to show some of the best players the South has to offer. In this game, I think I'm going to pick Jacksonville. Bit of a run of form pick. I think Jacksonville has won probably 2 of their last 3 or 3 of their last 4. They've been in winning terms, so with that, I'm going to pick Jacksonville. James?
Yes, we've seen this from Jackson. We saw this from Jacksonville last year. They started off with the exact same record last year, 1-3, and then they ended the season 9-1, and they're looking towards doing that again, starting off 1-3, and right now they're 4-3 against Raleigh Flyers, who I believe is 4-3, if I'm not mistaken. I'm gonna assume 4-3. If I'm wrong, someone correct me in the comments.
Raleigh is actually 5-3.
5-3. Well, they have 3 losses.
Yeah.
So this is big. Jacksonville has taken the 3rd seed in the South, which used to belong to Atlanta. It's looking a lot like deja vu, except for Dallas is here. That's not the deja vu part. Of course, with Raleigh, we know they have players: Justin Allen, Terrence Mitchell, the only 2 people that can come to my mind. Jacksonville, I don't really know much about Jacksonville, but because of how Jacksonville's been playing, I am picking Jacksonville. They have all the momentum, but this should be a good game. Raleigh doesn't want to embarrass themselves at home on ESPN3. They do pretty well at home, except for when they're playing Dallas and some other teams. They don't really get blown out, not even against Dallas. So I expect them to fight out of Raleigh, but I think Jacksonville has momentum going for this game.
Yes, they definitely do. So we both picked the same on that one. And I don't think we're going to pick a different result on this one either. We have the Dallas Roughnecks versus the Atlanta Hustle. Dallas equals Golden State Warriors. Can we just say that right now?
Yes.
Both probably the greatest teams in the league right now. Dallas undefeated, Atlanta in the 4th spot. I expect this to be another 12-point walk like Dallas usually does against every team. They just seem to win by 12 points every time. So with that, I'm going to go with Dallas. James?
Yes, Atlanta. We saw this from Atlanta last year. They looked like they're getting that playoff spot, and then boom. And then now their next couple opponents are not going to be easy on them. So they have to turn up the engines now. And if they could somehow get an upset against Dallas, well, I'd be happy because it would crush out spirits for their next game. But unfortunately, that's not going to happen. Maybe not, unless there's like a bunch of injuries. I'm picking Dallas in this, barring any special injuries. I don't know whether Brody Smith's going to come back in this game or not. He's scheduled to come back soon, so look out for Brody Smith, guys. I know we're all ready to see him play.
We are. And moving on to our next game, I was really hoping that you would save the joke of turning up the engines until Charlotte, because they're trains. But I'll leave that there. No harm done. So now, moving on to the next day, our next game is the Jacksonville Cannons on their second leg versus the Charlotte Express. Jacksonville will be a little worn down from playing Raleigh. Obviously, it's a game of the week, and they actually don't get a lot of time to rest. But don't get me wrong, Charlotte's a great team. They have some great players, and they're definitely building on their success of early season, but I'm still going to pick Jacksonville to win. James?
Yeah, to me, the South and the West Division are very close in how competitive they are. Can't really count any team out unless it's Dallas. They just go above the rest, and then everyone else is close, and then Dallas is up here. But definitely, like I said, Jacksonville has a little bit of momentum, and definitely I think Raleigh's going to tire them out. I don't know if Charlotte has enough to beat Jacksonville. They can. They have what it takes. I mean, they did beat Austin, and Austin's showing to be a good team now.
Mm-hmm.
But against Jacksonville, I don't know. I'm picking Jacksonville in this game, but it's hard for me to say. I could literally flip a coin with this one, but I'm going to pick Jacksonville.
Okay. So we both picked Jacksonville to get the double win this weekend. So now we move on to the last game in the South, which, sorry, James, it's the Dallas Roughnecks versus the Nashville Nightwatch. Now, we'll compare this to Golden State Warriors and the Denver Nuggets. I mean, Denver Nuggets have some great players, don't get me wrong. So does Nashville Nightwatch. But
Tom Radcliffe.
I mean,
so, he's our only hope.
Yeah. So basically, just Dallas. That's who I'm picking. James.
There's not much I can say for this. It's I'm hoping Brody doesn't come back. I'm hoping Jimmy Mickle gets lost. I'm hoping Anthony Rasmussen just doesn't show up.
Yeah, the bus takes a wrong turn. That's what we need.
Yes, I'm hoping for a lot, but I think that hope is going to be in vain. I'm going to be at this game just to watch my team get destroyed. Oh yeah, if you guys haven't noticed, I'm not even wearing my Nightwatch hat. Not even because I'm not supporting them, but because I lost it. I don't think I lost it. I mean, it's in the house. I just don't feel like looking for it. So I'm not even going to talk about this game. Just Dallas.
Yeah, so, let's just keep on the disappointing trend and go to the Midwest Division, where we have our first team to get eliminated from the playoffs. And that is the Cincinnati Revolution at 0-9. So they are officially eliminated from the playoffs. So maybe we won't see so much from them in the next couple games, although they might try to avoid being the new Detroit going 0-14. So that brings us to our first game in the Midwest Division this week, and that is the Indianapolis Alley Cats versus the Cincinnati Revolution. So I don't know if it was this week or last week, but Indianapolis beat Pittsburgh 31-23. Now, that might go down as the upset of the season. I mean, it wasn't close. They won 31-23.
It was very surprising.
That's not close.
That's the first. No. I'm not saying that's the first non-Madison team. I remember Chicago beat them last year.
Yeah. So that being said, I think Indianapolis can pretty much wrap it up against Cincinnati, but maybe I'm wrong. James?
I think Cincinnati's going to be coming here to play spoiler. Social media rivalry alert. Indianapolis and Cincinnati seem to have something going on Twitter. It was actually funny because I just came across it, where Cincinnati basically told Indianapolis, basically they were saying, be ready, we're going to beat you. That wasn't their exact tag, but they said something like that.
Yeah.
And then Indy came back, said, hashtag sweep the series 3-0 at Revolution. I was like, oh snap. So yes, these two apparently are ready to play each other. They're ready to butt heads. Apparently there's a rivalry that I didn't know about between Indy and Cincy. If there was, I never really paid attention to it because it's never really been competitive. But Cincy's been playing pretty good this year. They just haven't pulled out a win yet. But I'm picking Indy in this just because of history.
Yeah. All right, so maybe this just makes me glad about being a Minnesota fan because Minnesota doesn't really have a rival with any team.
Yes.
I mean, they don't. So that moves us on to our next game, and that's the Madison Radicals versus the Minnesota Windchill.
Ben, you're lucky. Okay, I have to be upset because Nashville is close to getting completely eliminated from the playoffs. Even if Minnesota still loses this, they're still in playoff contention and probably still going to make it.
True, so I can't complain about that, but I will anyways. So Madison Radicals, obviously a very dominant team. They handled Chicago pretty well in their game of the week, and they've been taking care of business. One of the few undefeated teams left in the AUDL. Minnesota's coming and looking to kind of bring in a status quo that they're actually relevant in the Midwest this year. I know Minnesota is 6-2, and that's a great record. Only losing to Madison and Pittsburgh, and the Madison game wasn't even close. But that's the first week of the season, which I don't want to say doesn't count. But I mean, no one really knows what they're made of in the first week of the season. So I'm looking for Minnesota to come pretty close. Maybe they won't do it, but maybe with my love and support, it'll give them the extra 3 points that they need to win. So I am picking the Minnesota win show. James?
If only love and support did the job, Nashville would be undefeated right now. I'm sorry, Ben. I'm picking Madison. I mean, Minnesota has to prove to me they're capable of beating Madison. I mean, congratulations, you're 6-2. But wait, has Minnesota beaten Pittsburgh yet?
No.
Okay. Well, I mean, how much I can say? They haven't beaten the two teams that you really need to. Because here's the thing: even if Minnesota makes the playoffs, you're most likely going to have to play Pittsburgh first and then Madison. But if you can't beat Pittsburgh or Madison, then it's like you're making the playoffs just to go back home. Now, Minnesota making the playoffs is a
that's
big
an accomplishment.
Exactly. I mean, a Minnesota team in the playoffs. Who would have thought? I'm being mean to Ben. Madison over Minnesota. Ben is probably like staring at me through his computer screen.
No, but this might be the first time I cry on camera.
I'm just kidding. Minnesota has a history of teams making the playoffs. They just never.
But they don't do anything in the playoffs.
First round exits all the time.
Prime example, right here on my shirt. All right.
Are you wearing a Wild shirt?
Yes. Yeah, let's move on from that amount of sadness. This has been a very sad episode. So let's just continue the trend and talk about the next game. But maybe that'll make us laugh because it's so pitiful. And that is the Cincinnati Revolution versus the Detroit Mechanics.
Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, we rip on the Detroit Mechanics too much. So Cincinnati's on their second leg, and I know I have a Detroit fan with me downstairs, so this might be interesting. But I'm gonna pick Cincinnati. No, I'm just kidding. I can't say that on camera. I don't want to get humiliated. I'm going with Detroit Mechanics for this game.
This is the equivalent to picking the best of a bad situation. To be honest, I'm like one of the few people in our group that supports the Mechanics. They're not necessarily my favorite team. My favorite team is the Night Watch. And at one point, it was Chicago, and that was where Nashville got a team, and that was with the Brody Smith bandwagon. But I do support Detroit as an underdog. So I'm picking them against Cincinnati, and it's a very rare case that I will ever pick Detroit in anything or Cincinnati in anything. And if you told, and in the preseason, even though it was just a preseason, it didn't count. When Detroit beat Pittsburgh, I was laughing my butt off because I was just like, "What the heck just happened?" But when Detroit beat Cincinnati, I was like, "Okay, maybe we have a Detroit team this year." And they won again, and then they started losing and losing and losing, and I was like, "I don't know what to do here, Detroit."
Yeah. Yeah. So we both pick Detroit, surprisingly, because it's Detroit. I mean, come on. All right. So now we move on to our last game in the Midwest, and that, well, since I'm a Minnesota fan and Minnesota's going to get that third seed, I'm calling this the battle for fourth, even though it doesn't really matter. It's the Indianapolis Alley Cats versus the Chicago Wildfire. Indianapolis proving some upsets. Chicago almost pulled an upset against Madison. They kept it very close. This is actually a really hard game for us because both these teams I would consider at exactly the same level. So whoever wins, may the wind be in your favor. That's just what I'm going to say. Okay, I'm a man of character who does not like uh, having 2 games in one weekend. I think that's brutal and a little unfair to the stature of the players. So I think that has a very big effect, and I'm going to pick the Chicago Wildfire simply because Indianapolis is on their second leg. James?
One thing I like about Indianapolis is they do have a bit of depth, and at this point, they have more depth than Chicago. Honestly, I'm picking Indy in this over Chicago for a couple of reasons. One, Ben, don't sleep on Indy. Okay, because here's the thing: Minnesota and Indy, I think they have a couple more times to play the season, don't they?
They have played twice, so they
Probably,
might. They might have
prob-
one more.
probably one more. Okay, so I'm assuming Minnesota will take the series. But if they
Yeah,
do, but if they happen to play a fourth time and Indy ties the series with them, then it could possibly go to unfortunately, AUDL doesn't do wins against common opponents because if they did, Indy has that win against Pittsburgh, and
yeah.
Minnesota currently does not. So that could play a factor, but I think they go straight to point differential.
Which Minnesota doesn't have either.
Yeah. So,
I think
but
plus they're +1 at 6-2.
yeah. So basically, I'm saying Indianapolis every single season. I mean, last season was their first time not making it to the playoffs. So they're a pretty consistently good team, and a team that I didn't even think would do good this particular season. They're doing very well for themselves, beating Pittsburgh and putting themselves back on the map in the Midwest. I'm picking Indianapolis because even though they're on the second leg, they do have roster depth, and they're a very consistent team. While Chicago's still in the rebuilding season, and maybe they can come back next year and fight. And I know Chicago will fight, but this year is just not their year.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. So who are you picking again?
Indianapolis.
Okay, okay. All right, so good. Another time where we did not pick the same thing, which we want, because we want James to have the L on his head next week. But I'm
Uh,
sure he's thinking the same thing against me, so
yes.
I'm just going to stop talking about that. All right, so now we move on to the West Division, and our first game we have is the Seattle Cascades versus the Los Angeles Aviators. The Cascades have been winning lately. Um, they just beat San Jose, um, and I think they have a 4-game win streak right now after
So
starting pretty low.
yeah, something of that nature. I think they're 6-3 actually.
Yeah, so they have a bit of a win streak right now, and Los Angeles played well last weekend, so maybe they have a little bit of momentum coming into this game. But I'm still going to pick the Seattle Cascades. James?
Yeah. I know early in the season, I think LA beat Seattle. I'm not entirely sure, but I think they do have winning in Seattle. However, Seattle is the prime example. They're what Detroit, Cincinnati, Charlotte, Nashville, they're all the terrible teams, no offense, guys, need to look up to. Because when they were the Seattle Raptors, they were the laughing stock of the West Division. And somehow the rebranding when they became Seattle Cascades. They're still in Seattle. They're still a Seattle-based team. They made the playoffs and then made it to the Western Finals and got beat by San Jose. And so they're a prime example of you don't have to stay at the bottom. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Seattle actually beat Los Angeles earlier this year. I just
Okay,
looked it up.
okay. I wasn't exactly sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I am picking Seattle in this game. They are a consistently good team, and again, like I said, they're a prime example of you don't need to stay at the bottom. Um, they rebranded. They did a lot of things, changed their leadership, brought in some players, and now they're the team that people expect to win against teams like LA and a lot of other teams. So I'm picking Seattle in this game. LA, I know they'll come out fighting, but I don't. Seattle has the number one offense. Wait, does San Francisco have number one offense or number one defense, or both? I
I
think
think they
Seattle still has number
probably
one
have
offense.
both.
No.
They probably
Well,
have both at this
I know.
point.
I know Seattle has a great offense. And LA is gonna have to put up some great defense to stop it. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so now we move on to our next game, which is the undefeated San Francisco Flamethrowers against the Vancouver Riptide. San Francisco undefeated. Vancouver Riptide, a very good team, but I think they're hovering around the 500 mark right now. They haven't played that many games, actually.
Yeah.
But now they're going to start making up as they have a 2-game weekend this weekend. So I am going to pick San Francisco to continue their undefeated run, but I'd look for Vancouver to give them their money's worth. Um, don't count out those Riptide. So bottom line, I'm going San Francisco. James.
Yeah, you can never count on anyone in the West Division.
Mm-hmm.
I want to remind everyone last year. Remember, San Jose had an undefeated streak for a while. I think they got up to 6-0, and it was actually Vancouver that ended their winning streak, and everyone was surprised. Like I saw it on Twitter, and I was like, "What?" So it could also happen to San Francisco. I'm not guaranteeing it. I never make guarantees when it comes to sports, unless it's Dallas. But but
True. Yeah.
so I am going to pick San Francisco in this game. However, I do know Vancouver. Vancouver is sitting in the third seed. They're sitting in a playoff spot, and they're actually fairly safe given that I don't know who the number 4 seed is. But
It is the Los Angeles Aviators.
what's their record?
2-3, so they're 1 game behind.
Okay, but again, Vancouver is a pretty consistent. This year they're pretty consistent. Last year they were a 4-10 team. San Francisco, they've been looking at this for a long time. I remember when the West Division was first created, and there was 2 seeds going into the playoffs. They made it, lost against San Jose. Last year they lost against Seattle. Now San Francisco's finally ready to take the Western Division title. Hopefully, again, no guarantees made. So I'm picking San Francisco in this game. But like you
Okay.
said, Vancouver probably gonna fight.
Yeah. All right, so now we move on to our last game in the West Division, and that is actually a rematch of the game that James referenced in his last segment, which is the San Jose Spiders against the Vancouver Riptide. San Jose is currently sitting at 1-5. It actually doesn't seem like they're 1-5. It seems like they've won a lot more games than that. But Vancouver sitting in that third spot. I'm actually going to go with Vancouver on this one, guys. I know I've been picking San Jose lately, but they're not pulling it out. So until that changes, I think I'm going to change first, and I'm going to go with the Riptide on this one. James?
Yeah, sometimes you just gotta go with what's going on in front of you and stop choosing your expectations. However, I'm picking San Jose in this. One, they're on a second leg. Two, they're on a second leg from having to face
San
San
Francisco.
Francisco. Exactly. What time does Vancouver play on both of the occasions?
Let's see. It is 9 o'clock Eastern to 4 o'clock Eastern. So there's actually a fairly good bit of time. A lot more than some of the other doubles I've been seeing lately.
Yeah. Okay. So they do have a pretty good amount of time to rest. However, I think it's just that Vancouver's going to get tired out of San Francisco, and Vancouver doesn't have that much depth on their roster. They kind of rely on the same handler core, cutting core. And San Jose, I mean, they don't have depth at all right now. They're kind of like Chicago in the rebuilding stage, but it's still the West Division. And when you're tired, any team in the West Division knows how to take advantage. I mean, so yeah, I'm picking San Jose for that reason, for the second leg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, so good. We had some different picks in that division as well. So more chances to take the lead on the opponent, and more chances that your opponent is going to be wearing that big old L on their foot.
By the way, it's going to be Ben. It will be Ben.
Okay, James taking his shots now. Fair enough. All right, so now we move on to the East Division, and the first game that we have is the DC Breeze versus the Montreal Royale. Montreal got absolutely smoked last weekend.
Who did they play?
I believe it was actually DC. Yeah, they lost by 14 to DC last week. So this is a rematch, obviously, from last week. I'm looking for Montreal to try and put the pressure back on and see if maybe they can slide into that third spot. Because it's going to be a competition between them and the New York Empire, who have been underperforming this year. So I'm going to go with DC. It's probably not going to be a 14-point blowout this time, but I'm still going to go with DC. James?
Yeah, the thing about rematches is they're rarely, if ever, the same the same result because the team that lost, they're coming out like we're not losing by 14 again,
Yeah.
and sometimes they come out winning. Oh yeah, of course we all remember when Montreal beat Toronto, which was at first I was confused on how they couldn't beat DC, but I heard from a source that most of the Toronto people were out with Team Canada practice obligations. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I would assume that some Montreal people were out, but it's whatever.
Yeah.
I'm picking DC in this. I'm sorry, Montreal. I love Montreal. I was
So
rooting
do
for
I.
them. I
So
was
do I.
rooting for them last year. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
they can't beat New York
Yeah, that's their only problem.
or DC for crying out loud. They haven't ever beaten DC either. I don't think.
Yeah.
So
No.
history is not on their side here. History's not on their side. So I'm picking DC in this. It's a different DC team this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So now we're gonna move on to our next game, and that is the Toronto Rush versus the Ottawa Outlaws. Very close Canadian border, I'm sure. Is this the rivalry, or is it Toronto versus Montreal that's the rivalry?
I think Toronto versus Montreal, even if
Is bigger.
yeah, I mean, come on.
I think it's more Ottawa versus DC that's a rivalry because they're the two nations' capitals.
Yeah,
So,
they should do
um,
no. They should do DC versus Ottawa like every single year on 4th of July.
oh, and just make fun of Canada's Independence Day by doing it in America's Independence Day. Oh,
And make it in DC's home every single time. I'm so wrong.
that's kind of unfair. Does anybody know when Canada's Independence Day is? Or do they even have an Independence Day because they're still under English rule? Maybe I'll look it up after the video and maybe put it in and just make myself look stupid.
Oh yeah. And
And
for
I'll
all
just
Canadians, we mean no offense at all.
no, we just don't know. We're ignorant Americans. So, nevertheless, I am going to pick Toronto in this one. Ottawa just doesn't have much going for them other than the Alexander brothers, and Toronto's got everything going for them, like the number one seed and very good players and a good record. So, Toronto, you're up.
Yeah, Toronto. Honestly, I'm not even gonna lie. And it's surprising when I saw Toronto change their leadership. I expected them to not be as good this year, and they proved me wrong. Thank you, Toronto. Honestly, there's two teams I don't like in the AUDL. Don't ask why. I don't like Toronto and I don't like Madison. And Andrew's gonna hate me for saying that. So
I'm secretly with you there.
so when Toronto proved me wrong, it's just like put a bitter feeling in my stomach. It's like, dang. But I'm picking Toronto in this. I'm putting my bias aside, and I'm picking Toronto.
Yeah. All right, so this is interesting. On the next day, these teams, the two games actually flip-flop with teams. We have DC and Ottawa and Montreal and Toronto.
Ooh,
So this
the
is
two
a
rivalries we were
solid
just referring to.
this is a solid weekend in the Eastern Division. So I'll start with DC and Ottawa, the two nations' capitals. This is always a great game, but America, DC Breeze, you're going on this one, Andrew. And James may disagree with me on this one, but James, let's see what you have to say.
Good save, man. Good save. I am putting my complete bias in this. I mean no offense, but I'm gonna shout USA like 3 times as I pick DC. USA, USA, USA. There we go. So I'm picking DC in this, but it is in Canada. It's in Ottawa. So Ben is probably laughing at me right now.
I am, because I was actually thinking of pulling the same thing, but anyways. So we both have the same picks for the East so far, but now is the interesting one because we're not going to put bias in this one. This is Montreal and Toronto. They're both in Canada. They're both up north. We both like Montreal, but we both know that Toronto has a good chance. But we also know that Montreal seems to always beat Toronto. So I'm going to stick with the history on this one, and I'm going to say that Montreal is going to beat Toronto. James.
Yeah. I mean, you do have a point. Think Toronto's 2-2 against Montreal. Did Montreal join after Toronto won the championship, or were they in the league that year? Not
I'm
entirely
not
sure.
I'm not actually sure.
But I know after Toronto won the championship, them and Montreal are 2-2, so they split the series each year. But I think they play 3 times this year, so there
So
will be
somebody's going to have to win
someone will
the
win the series
series.
this year, and I'm pulling for Montreal to win it. And I'm like I said, I don't like Toronto, but I'm not putting bias into this when I say I'm picking Montreal.
Yeah. Yeah, Montreal actually won the first leg, so they have a little bit of the advantage for the series this year,
But it
since
is
it's
in
actually
Toronto.
3
It is in
games.
Toronto.
What was
So
that?
it is in Toronto.
Okay.
So I don't know if home field advantage will play. I have not seen home field advantage has not been alive in Ultimate this year.
No, it hasn't.
So many times the away team is just pulling out the wins.
Yeah, and who knows why that is, but so be it. We can only predict. We can't.
Another reason to pick Montreal.
Yeah, we can't. We can't get it right every time. So maybe that's why I'm going to college to be a meteorologist, because I can get it wrong and still get paid.
But
So,
everyone will hate you.
well,
Everyone will hate
everyone already hates me. Ouch, that was kind of harsh.
you.
So now, I'm laughing. Don't worry, I don't actually mean that. So now, with a few jokes and a few tears, we leave you all tonight, and we are signing off. Good night.